Chapter 1, The Night Everything Changed asterisk. The first time Adrian told me I belonged to him, he said it so softly I almost mistook it for love. We were lying in bed together, the city lights glowing faintly through the floor-to-ceiling windows of his penthouse apartment. His fingers traced slow circles against my waist while I scrolled mindlessly through my phone. Then suddenly, he took the phone from my hand, locked it, and placed it face down on the nightstand. "Look at me," he murmured. I laughed quietly. "You're acting dramatic again." But Adrian didn't laugh. His dark eyes stayed fixed on mine with that same intense look he always had whenever he stared at me too long. Like he was trying to memorize every detail of my face. "You spend too much time distracted," he said calmly. "I don't like competing for your attention." "Competing with Instagram?" I teased. "With anyone." There it was again. That strange possessiveness. Most girls probably would have called it a red flag. Honestly, maybe I should have too. But Adrian never sounded controlling. He sounded devoted. Obsessed, even. And for some reason, I liked it. Maybe because after years of being ignored, cheated on, and treated like I was forgettable, having someone look at me like I was the center of their universe felt addictive. Adrian always looked at me that way. Like nothing else existed. He reached up slowly, brushing a strand of hair behind my ear. "If someone ever tries to take you away from me," he whispered, "that would be very bad for them." I rolled my eyes dramatically. "You sound like a movie villain." A faint smile appeared on his lips. "You have no idea." At the time, I thought he was joking. Now I know that was probably the only honest thing he ever said to me. Because the truth was, I knew absolutely nothing about the man I was sleeping beside. Not his real name. Not his real job. Not even the fact that half the city was terrified of him. But that night, none of that mattered. That night, he was just Adrian. The man who bought me flowers every Friday without fail. The man who remembered my coffee order better than I did. The man who somehow always appeared whenever I needed him most. Sometimes it honestly felt like he was watching me constantly. Not in a creepy way. More like nothing escaped his attention. Once, I casually mentioned wanting a rare book I'd seen online. The next morning it was sitting on my kitchen counter wrapped with a black ribbon. Another time, I told him I felt unsafe walking home from work late at night. The very next evening, a black SUV waited outside my office building. I thought it was coincidence until the same driver appeared 3 nights in a row. When I asked Adrian about it, he simply kissed my forehead and said, "I take care of what belongs to me." Again, that word. Belongs. I should have been disturbed by it. Instead, my stomach flipped every time he said it. Maybe that makes me stupid. Maybe it makes me toxic. But Adrian had this terrifying way of making dangerous things sound romantic. And the worst part? I think he knew exactly what he was doing. 3 months into our relationship, I realized something else. I had never once met his friends. Or family. Or coworkers. Actually, I'd never even seen him work. Whenever I asked what he did for a living, he'd smile faintly and say, "Import business." That was it. No details. No stories. Nothing. And somehow, despite the expensive watches, luxury cars, private security-looking drivers, and penthouse overlooking Manhattan, I never questioned it enough. Because every time I got close to asking too much, Adrian distracted me. Usually with kisses. Or gifts. Or the way he'd pin me against the wall and whisper things that made my brain stop working completely. Looking back now, I realize that was intentional. He never wanted me thinking too hard. He wanted me addicted to him. And maybe I already was. Then came the night everything shattered. It was almost 2 a.m. when I woke up suddenly. At first, I didn't know why. Then I heard Adrian speaking on the phone from the balcony outside the bedroom. His voice was cold. Not calm. Not soft. Cold. The kind of voice that instantly makes your skin crawl. No, he said sharply. I gave instructions already. Silence. Then. I don't care what he said. Handle it. Another pause. And then the sentence that made my blood run cold. Make sure the body disappears this time.
Chapter 2, The Man on the Balcony. For a second, I genuinely thought I'd imagined it. Make sure the body disappears this time. The words echoed in my head while I sat frozen in bed, staring toward the balcony curtains moving softly in the night breeze. My heart started pounding so hard it actually hurt. Body? What body? Adrian stayed outside for another minute, speaking too quietly for me to hear clearly. Then the balcony door slid open. I quickly shut my eyes. A second later, I felt the mattress dip beside me. His hand brushed lightly through my hair. You're awake, he said softly. Not a question. A statement. I forced myself to yawn. Barely. For a moment, he didn't answer. I could feel him watching me. Then finally. Go back to sleep, sweetheart. His voice sounded normal again. Warm. Gentle. Like the terrifying man from the balcony had never existed. I nodded slightly and turned away from him, pretending to fall asleep while my brain screamed at me to run. But I didn't run. Because the truth was. A part of me was scared of what would happen if I tried. The next morning, Adrian acted completely normal. Too normal. He made breakfast himself while jazz music played softly through the penthouse speakers. By the time I walked into the kitchen, he was already pouring coffee into my favorite mug. Good morning, he said with a small smile. He looked devastatingly handsome in black slacks and a rolled-up white dress shirt. Perfect. Untouched. Like a man who definitely hadn't talked about dead bodies at 2 in the morning. I stared at him carefully. How long have you been awake? A while. You left the bed. I had work. There it was again. Work. That mysterious invisible job. I tried sounding casual. What kind of import business even needs calls at 2 a.m.? Adrian paused while stirring his coffee. Just for half a second. But I noticed. International clients, he replied smoothly. Then he walked over, tilted my chin upward gently, and kissed me. Don't think so much. That line should have irritated me. Instead, my stomach betrayed me completely. God, I hated how easily he affected me. He smirked slightly like he knew exactly what I was thinking. I have meetings today, he said. Stay here tonight. I have my own apartment, you know. I know. Then why do you always act like I live here already? Because eventually you will. I laughed nervously. He didn't. That should have scared me more than it did. Around noon, Adrian left the penthouse after kissing my forehead and telling me not to go anywhere alone. Again. He said that constantly. At first I thought it was overprotective boyfriend behavior. Now it felt different. Like a warning. The second he left, I started searching. I don't even know what I expected to find. A criminal record maybe. An article. Something. But searching Adrian Volkov gave me almost nothing. No social media. No interviews. No business website. Nothing. For a man with endless money, it made no sense. Then I noticed something even stranger. Every single photo of him online looked different. Different hair. Different ages. Different names attached. My chest tightened. What the hell was going on? I clicked another article. This one mentioned a man connected to organized crime in New York. The photo was blurry. But the eyes. Those cold dark eyes were unmistakable. Before I could read further, my phone suddenly rang. Unknown number. I answered cautiously. Hello? Silence. Then a woman's voice whispered. You need to leave him. My blood froze. What? He's dangerous. Who is this? You don't understand who you're sleeping beside. The call ended. Just like that. I stared at the screen in shock. A second later, another notification appeared. A text message. Unknown number. Look outside. My hands trembled as I walked toward the penthouse windows. Down below, across the street. A black SUV sat parked beside the sidewalk. And leaning casually against the driver's door was Adrian. Staring directly up at me. Like he already knew everything I'd done.
Chapter 3, You Searched for Me. The moment our eyes met through the glass, my stomach dropped. Adrian smiled slowly from the street below. Not angry. Not surprised. Almost amused. Then my phone buzzed again. Cued attempt. I stepped back from the window instantly. My hands were shaking so badly I nearly dropped the phone. There was no way he could know I'd been searching for him. Unless... A horrible thought crossed my mind. Was he watching my phone? The apartment? Me? Another text appeared before I could think further. Open the door, sweetheart. My heartbeat stopped. The penthouse elevator required a private code only Adrian had. Meaning somehow, he was already upstairs. A soft knock echoed through the apartment. 3 slow taps. Calm. Patient. Like he already knew I would obey. Every survival instinct in my body screamed at me not to open that door. But somehow, I still walked toward it. The second I unlocked it, Adrian stepped inside smoothly, shutting the door behind him with one hand. His dark coat smelled faintly like smoke and expensive cologne. He looked composed as always. Too composed. You're home early, I said carefully. I missed you. He reached up, brushing his thumb gently across my cheek. Normally that touch melted me instantly. This time it made me nervous. His eyes studied my face for a long moment. Then finally, you searched my name. Straight to the point. No denial possible. I swallowed hard. I was curious. Curiosity is dangerous. His tone stayed soft, but something underneath it felt sharp enough to cut skin. I forced myself to laugh lightly. You sound paranoid. Adrian stared at me silently. Then, did you find anything interesting? The terrifying part was, I genuinely couldn't tell if he was threatening me. I tried stepping around him toward the kitchen, but his hand caught my wrist gently. Not painful. Just firm enough to stop me. Adrian. Who called you? My blood ran cold. How do you know someone called me? His jaw tightened slightly. Wrong answer. Because, he said quietly, the moment it happened, 4 different people informed me. I stopped breathing for a second. 4 people? What did that even mean? Who were these people? Adrian looked down at me with that same unreadable expression he always wore when he was hiding something. Which was apparently all the time. You're frightened, he murmured. Well, yeah. My voice cracked slightly. You talk about bodies disappearing at 2 in the morning and expect me not to be frightened? For the first time since I'd met him, Adrian went completely still. The air in the room suddenly felt heavy. Dangerous. You were listening. Not a question. I crossed my arms defensively. You weren't exactly whispering. He stared at me for several long seconds. Then unexpectedly, he sighed. Actually sighed. Like I was the difficult one here. Finally, he walked toward the massive windows overlooking the city. You should stop digging into things that don't concern you. I almost laughed from disbelief. Things that don't concern me? Adrian, I'm literally sleeping beside you every night. That's exactly why you shouldn't ask questions. I blinked. What does that even mean? He turned toward me slowly. And suddenly the warm, obsessed boyfriend I knew was gone. This man looked colder. Older somehow. Like violence lived inside him naturally. It means, he said calmly, the less you know, the safer you are. Silence filled the apartment. I should have left then. Any sane woman would have. Instead, I whispered the question that had been haunting me all day. Who are you? Adrian's gaze locked onto mine. For one brief second, I saw actual emotion there. Not anger. Not irritation. Fear. But it disappeared almost instantly. Then he walked toward me again, slow and controlled, until he stood close enough for me to feel his warmth. You really want the truth? I nodded nervously. His hand slid around my throat gently, not choking, just holding me there while his thumb brushed my jaw. Possessive. Terrifying. Intimate. The truth, he whispered, would make you hate me. Then suddenly, his phone rang. The moment he answered, his entire expression changed. Cold. Alert. Dangerous. He listened silently for a few seconds before speaking. Where? Pause. Then his eyes darkened. I'm coming. The call ended. Adrian grabbed his coat immediately. What happened? I asked. Instead of answering, he walked straight toward me, cupped my face tightly, and kissed me hard enough to steal the air from my lungs. Then he rested his forehead against mine. Lock the doors, he said quietly. Adrian. No matter who comes here, don't open them. My chest tightened. You're scaring me. His eyes softened slightly. You should be. And then he walked out of the penthouse.
Chapter 4, The Blood on His Hands. The penthouse felt wrong after Adrian left. Too quiet. Too empty. I kept replaying his last words in my head. You should be. Normal boyfriends didn't say things like that. Normal boyfriends also didn't have mysterious phone calls, armed security, or conversations about disappearing bodies. Yet somehow, part of me still wanted him to walk back through the door and tell me this was all one giant misunderstanding. That was the worst thing about Adrian. Even when he terrified me, I still craved him. I hated that. Around midnight, I finally decided to leave. I threw clothes into a bag, grabbed my keys, and headed toward the elevator. But the moment the doors opened downstairs, two men in black suits stepped directly into my path. Miss Carter, one of them said politely, "You can't leave." My stomach dropped. Excuse me? The boss gave instructions. The boss. Not Adrian. The boss. I forced a laugh. I think you're confused. I'm not a prisoner. Neither man moved. Please return upstairs. Fear crawled slowly up my spine. Did Adrian seriously tell you to stop me from leaving? The taller man looked almost uncomfortable answering. Yes, ma'am. I stared at them in disbelief. Then anger finally exploded through my fear. This is insane. I shoved past them before they could react and stormed toward the building exit. But the second I stepped outside, a black car screeched to a stop directly in front of me. The back door opened instantly, and Adrian stepped out. His white dress shirt was covered in blood. I froze. Not a little blood. A terrifying amount. For one horrible second, I thought he'd been shot. Then I realized none of it seemed to belong to him. Adrian looked exhausted. Furious. Dangerous. The second his eyes landed on me standing outside barefoot with a bag in my hand, his expression darkened even further. "What are you doing?" he asked quietly. I couldn't even answer. I was too busy staring at the blood staining his hands. His gaze followed mine. Then without emotion, he pulled black gloves from his pocket and slid them on calmly like this happened every day. My voice came out shaky. "Whose blood is that?" Silence. The driver and security men immediately looked away. Like they already knew not to react. Adrian walked toward me slowly. "Go upstairs." "No." The word surprised even me. His jaw tightened. "I'm serious." "So am I." My voice cracked. What the hell is happening? People walking down the street had started staring. Adrian noticed immediately. And suddenly his hand wrapped around my arm firmly. "Inside. Now." Something in his tone terrified me enough to obey. The second we entered the private elevator, the tension became unbearable. I stood pressed against the opposite wall while Adrian removed his bloody gloves slowly. He looked completely calm again. That somehow made it worse. Finally, I whispered. "Did you kill someone?" The elevator fell silent. Adrian looked at me for a long moment. Then, "Yes." The word shattered something inside me. I actually stopped breathing for a second. He admitted it so easily. No hesitation. No guilt. Nothing. I stared at him in horror. "Oh my God." Adrian stepped closer immediately. "Look at me." I couldn't. My entire body had started shaking. "Sweetheart. Don't call me that." For the first time since meeting him, I saw real anger flash across his face. Not explosive anger. Controlled anger. The terrifying kind. You are safer not knowing details. You killed someone. He would have killed you. My thoughts stopped completely. What? Adrian ran a hand through his dark hair roughly for the first time all night. "There are people trying to get to me," he said quietly. "And hurting you is the easiest way to do it." I stared at him. None of this felt real anymore. "What are you?" I whispered. Adrian looked directly into my eyes. "And this time," he answered, "I'm the man everyone warned you about." Chapter 5, Run From Me. I didn't sleep that night. How could I? Every time I closed my eyes, I saw blood on Adrian's hands. Saw the terrifying calmness on his face when he admitted he'd killed someone. Like it meant nothing. Like death followed him so often he'd stopped feeling it years ago. Meanwhile, Adrian acted completely normal afterward. That was somehow the scariest part. After his confession, he showered, changed clothes, and poured himself whiskey while soft piano music played through the penthouse speakers. Like we hadn't just destroyed my entire reality. I sat frozen on the couch hugging my knees while he stood near the windows overlooking Manhattan. Neither of us spoke for almost 20 minutes. Finally, I whispered. "Tell me the truth." Adrian took a slow sip of whiskey. "You wouldn't survive the full truth. Try me." A faint smile appeared on his lips. Not amused. Almost sad. You think danger looks dramatic, he said quietly. Gunshots. Screaming. Men chasing each other through dark alleys. He turned toward me slowly. But real danger is much quieter. Something about the way he said it made chills spread down my spine. Adrian. My world destroys people, Sophia. That was the first time he'd ever used my full name. Usually he called me sweetheart. Baby. Mine. Never Sophia. And somehow hearing my real name from him felt more intimate than any kiss we'd shared. You need to leave me, he said softly. I blinked in shock. What? You heard me. But you just spent months acting obsessed with me. I am obsessed with you. The honesty in his voice made my stomach twist. Then why are you telling me to leave? For the first time since I'd met him. Adrian looked tired. Actually tired. Because despite the expensive suits and cold confidence, I suddenly realized something terrifying. This man genuinely believed he would ruin me. He walked toward me slowly and crouched in front of the couch. You still think you met me by accident? My heartbeat slowed. What does that mean? Adrian looked away briefly before answering. The coffee shop wasn't random. My blood ran cold. You planned that? Yes. The bookstore too? Yes. I stared at him in disbelief. Every important moment between us suddenly replayed differently in my head. The coincidences. The perfect timing. The way he always appeared exactly when I needed him. None of it had been accidental. Oh my God. Adrian's gaze softened slightly. I saw you almost a year before we spoke. Fear mixed horribly with curiosity inside me. Why? He was silent for several seconds. Then finally. Because you looked lonely. The answer hit harder than I expected. You watched me for a year because I looked lonely. You looked breakable. Something dark flickered behind his eyes. And I wanted you anyway. I should have run. Any sane woman would have grabbed her bag and disappeared immediately. Instead, I asked the question destroying me inside. How dangerous are you really? Adrian stared at me quietly. Then he reached into his coat pocket and handed me his phone. Read the headlines. Confused, I looked down at the screen. My breath caught instantly. Every article showed violence. Money laundering. Organized crime. Disappearances. Murder investigations. And one name appeared repeatedly. The ghost. Nobody knew his real identity. No confirmed photos. No fingerprints. No official records. Just rumors. A criminal powerful enough to make witnesses vanish overnight. My hands started trembling. Slowly, I looked back up at Adrian. He watched me carefully. Then softly. Now you understand why you need to run from me.